Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to begin first by taking a look here at the all hazards weather map put out by weather.gov, and we had been discussing how as this pattern was evolving, such as this deeper trough was plunging here into the western part of the United States, we were concerned about some cooler early morning temperatures, and we can see that the all hazards map is showing us here frost and freeze advisories out for this section of coastal California. Taking a look at what the temperatures got down to this morning, this is across the whole of the United States, but you can see the chillier weather tucked away in that trough. And if we just zoom in here over to this part of California and take a look at what was going on, these were actually the early morning observations here. We can see that as of, this is about 2 hours before sunrise, we saw 35 degrees, and through here 34 a little bit farther to the south of it. So temperatures were dropping off. And of course, there's an elevation dependence to this frost and freeze advisory. But looking at some of the reporting stations here, we were getting pretty chilly. Most of the temperatures, though, in the Central Valley we're hanging out here in the low to middle 30s. Nothing, though, getting to the freezing mark as it appears on the surface observations early this morning, though, in the Central Valley of California. Now, just to show you what this pattern's done, this is just an animation over the last 24 hours. So this is yesterday and early this morning, where you're seeing a series of dots that show up that show you how close we were to either setting record low temperatures, which is in the bluer colors, and then in the warmer colors, record highs. And you can actually see what the flow pattern is doing. There's a trough in the polar jet stream here and a big ridge that's running up over the Gulf of Mexico that's sitting right here. And as a result, we're getting record heat over the south. And then if you look over the west, we were approaching record cold temperatures. So this pattern is evolving and changing, and that's something we need to be talking about as we work our way into this weekend, because this is what it looks like right now. So just take a look at it. It looks pretty complicated, but stepping up deep into the atmosphere, this is the jet stream level winds. We have a northern branch of the jet stream that's getting really bunched up here. But it eventually meets up with the subtropical branch, which starts here. See this? Right here over basically the Baja of California. And then they both race together here over a massive ridge that's sitting in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, with this deeper trough that swept through, this is going to be producing a multi-day severe weather event in the mid part of the country. But what we're going to notice with this upcoming pattern is more of our storm systems are going to be coming in from the northwest once again. As you can see, we've developed a bit of a high over low pattern tucked away out here just north of Hawaii. Now, this pattern is not set in stone like this, though, and it's going to evolve. And I want to talk about some of the latest model projections for the evolution of this. But before we do that, let's do what we normally do in our Friday videos and just take a look at our overall water health. So this map shows you over the last 30 days total accumulated precipitation. Now, it is a radar-derived product, and that's why we see there are big gaps in here where we do not have good radar coverage, and there are mountains in the way. So we did get precipitation in those areas. It's just not observed by radar. But if you just come along the west coast of the United States, we can see that the pattern we did get into starting around March 7th, 8th, 9th, that has lasted up until this most recent trough that swept through, did its very best to help us recover in terms of total accumulated precipitation, like I said, especially in California. No overall change in the basin average snow water content as we work our way toward the end of this week, so these numbers have remained relatively constant. And again, just to point this out, very good snowpack throughout much of the Intermountain West here, and we've made some major progress out of the 40% range now back up into the 60s and 70% range here for the reporting stations in Sierra Nevada. Now, like I love to do on Fridays, let's just take a look at each one of these districts here. We're going to go to the Northern Sierra Precipitation 8-station index here first. We're now up to 23.7 inches when you average them all together. But remember, we should be sitting somewhere around 41, 42 inches at this time of year. So we're about 60% of what we should be seeing here. If we go over now to the San Joaquin stations, 17.5. Normal would be somewhere around 33. So this has been a nice increase. But once again, we're still sitting in deficit. And farther down south to Tulare Basin, we can see that great increase this week up to 12 inches, but that's about half where we should be. We should be sitting somewhere around 24 inches in total. So I went and I made a map here. I've shown you this before, but I wanted to just do it again for January 1st through March 25th. And we're looking at total precipitation ranks over the last 40 years. So this goes back to 1981. It includes 1981. So when we look at that, let's zoom in on the west coast here. We can see that trajectory of the storm systems earlier in the year really hammered coastal Washington. You can see some locations up there reporting their wettest in the last 40 years. But in general, the farther south you go, or once you get over into the lee side of the mountains here, of the Cascades, we're now seeing some folks having their top 10 driest. And as you get down here into much of the northern 2/3 of California and into Nevada, this has been one of the driest years in the last 40 years. So just kind of put this in perspective here. But we got to talk about this pattern change, because there's been some model shifts over the last couple of updates. Let's go ahead and look at it here. Okay, so let's play this out, staring down in the northern hemisphere, our troughs and ridge pattern. Ready? Big ridge setting up here. Remember, we just looked at that high over low pattern that's out to our west. And let's just see how things evolve. Now, what we're going to notice is throughout the next 36 hours or so, deep trough swings out of California and pulls into the Midwest. But behind it, we do have more troughing coming in. So we're not going to get rid of our cooler pattern as we work our way through this weekend. But the good news is this is still bringing in systems and more precipitation over the next several days to the West Coast. Now, after we get past the weekend and into early next week, we notice this being the main setup. And what it is the deepest trough is sitting here just off the coast of British Columbia. So this is going to target the Pacific Northwest with quite a few systems as we progress into next week, but not so much California, which is more to the protection of higher atmospheric pressure. That lasts through midweek next week, as you can see here. And as we get toward the end of the week, that trough begins to fade. So this is now next Saturday. Now, at this point, this is where the models are starting to transition in a way that is becoming more favorable for precipitation in California, but not the really wet conditions that we had been seeing. What am I talking about? Well, you notice there's a ridge forming here, at least higher heights over Alaska, with lower heights just off the west coast. And that could help redirect some of the subtropical jet stream flow back into California as we work our way out into day 10 and beyond. I'm going to tell you this, though. When I look out anything beyond about April 8th in our forecast models, we are losing signal fast, especially in the Pacific. Now, the Atlantic, I got a much stronger signal, but in the Pacific, I'm really losing it here. And as a result, I don't think predictability is very high once we get out into the second week of April and beyond. I'm going to show you what the forecasts are showing, but I don't think we have good predictability out that far. So let's get some of the details and some of the numbers here. Over the next week, you can clearly see the bias is wettest toward coastal Oregon, Washington, then getting up into British Columbia. With the pattern once again coming out of the northwest, that's also going to add up quite a bit of snow in the northern Rockies. But the farther south you go, the drier conditions get. And I like to show you this always compared to normal. So what we notice here is with that flow coming in from the northwest, the Sierra Nevada not getting the excess precipitation we would want to see them get, but it is quite wet compared to normal in coastal Oregon, Washington, and the northern Rocky Mountains. So what about total precipitation in terms of snowfall? We could be getting some huge snows here at higher elevation in the Cascades and northern Rockies, possibly well up over 3 to 4 feet of additional snow at the highest peaks in the Cascades, and you can see the northern Rockies grabbing another 10 to 30 inches of snow in that area. Meanwhile, because the flow is doing this in the near term, that does not help out with the situation here in the Sierra Nevada. Okay, looking at the actual operational model runs here, let's start this off early in the day here on Friday and play it forward. So let me pause you there and take you back. So by Friday afternoon and evening, we have this upper level trough that's sneaking through here while the big trough is digging out into the central part of the United States. So some precip on Friday night into coastal Oregon and Washington. Now this slides south throughout the day on Saturday, such that by Saturday afternoon and evening, getting into early Sunday morning, we've increased precipitation chances here through much of the Sacramento Valley, and then bringing in some snow into the Sierra Nevada. So a soggy weekend here for much of Northern California. Same thing as you just work your way up that I-5 corridor. But as we progress beyond this weekend, getting into next Monday morning, what we're going to watch is systems are coming over the top of this high pressure cell into British Columbia and eventually into Oregon and Washington. So what do we see Monday afternoon and evening? Getting into Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon and evening. So you just saw 3 days in a row where that deeper trough becomes established, and that brings in unsettled weather as we progress through the beginning of next week. Meanwhile, things in California stay on the drier side, and actually you're going to see in a few moments on the warmer side. Now, with that system coming through, I just want to pause it right here. This is Tuesday morning. I am concerned about the stronger winds with this system. I know we're planting a lot of crops, so we've got onions in the ground, potatoes in the ground, sugar beets are going in. And with that, as they start to emerge, we do worry about stronger winds possibly impacting that early crop. So just something to be on the lookout for this next system as it comes through on Tuesday. All right, let's now get into Wednesday, into Thursday, and now into Friday. Calmer end of next week, as you can see here. And then I just want to show you something. As I get out here longer term, you start to see out about day 10 the possible breakdown of that big high pressure cell that's sitting here as the jet stream readjusts to the new pattern I showed you a few moments ago. And that could increase our precipitation chances as we get out into that second week of April. But like I said, predictability out that far right now is kind of low. So I'm just going to show you what April 3rd through April 10th looks like, and I'm going to explain this by comparing it to what we saw earlier. You know, that time period forecast earlier this week was much drier for California. And now we're seeing those precipitation anomalies pull back a bit, back more toward normal. But overall, this is just not the strong flow directly out of the west that hammers the west coast for early April precipitation, which is why we see for most of the western United States near average to drier than average conditions. This is just what happens when ridges begin to build in the Gulf of Alaska. What are our temperatures going to do? Well, still, we got a chilly day on tap for today compared to normal across the western United States, averaging anywhere between 5 to 15 degrees below average. As we press forward and that trough begins to pull out here on Saturday, still another cool day, but this is not much different than what we saw today. So no extended threat of frost in this area. But as we saw, the troughs begin to pull more as we get into the weekend into the northwest. So look, Monday's depart from normal, Tuesday's departure from normal, and Wednesday. So California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, we warm up, but the troughs keep hitting the northwest, keeping temperatures there a little bit cooler than average as we progress into next Wednesday. What about just day 5 through 10? Again, where's that main trough going to be? It's going to be sitting right in through here, keeping things cooler in the Pacific Northwest and of course in British Columbia and the Canadian prairies, but allowing for a rebound of warmth down here in the southern part of our western region. And that seems to continue out to day 10, but like I said, the pattern out here from day 10 to day 15 is a bit muddy in the models. I'm going to have to watch the full weekend model run setup here to see how things change for us as we really progress into the month of April. So I do want to at least show you as we finish up this video what the latest long-range updates are. So this is now coming from the European model released late last night, looking at the month of April 8th through May 8th. And we do see here overall that where all that snowpack is in parts of the north central plains and then getting into, the Canadian prairies, that's what's probably going to keep parts of Montana on the cooler side of things. But we do see near average temperatures. Only cool bias I think we can detect in the west is going to be sitting on top of the big snowpack. But one of the trickiest things to understand will be what changes in the flow over the Gulf of Alaska, because we've now seen the model back off on keeping things really dry in this area. And there is the potential for some interaction with the subtropical jet stream helping keep the precipitation amounts near average, which would be good. We need to do that. In fact, we need to be above average, and I'm not seeing it fully for California here, but keeping them near average for the next month or so would be overall good. But the Pacific Northwest in the long-range European is showing up on the drier side of things. It's been very consistent with this pattern, just recently bringing the precipitation amounts up inside that circle I drew. So we'll keep an eye on it, process it over the weekend, report back to you on Monday, all right? Have a good one, and we'll talk to you again then. Thank you.